is, we're live, right? Okay, excellent. Is we're looking at the Old Testament translation passages that we had, and what we're looking up a few words. First, we'd written out kathav here as the paradigm. And we learned a bunch of things. We're learning how to use BDB's lexicon. We're talking about the trilateral root. And when you look, you have to look under the three-letter root for each word. And we're just having a few questions answered that related to that. So we had a student who looked at the very back of the lexicon where actually there's Aramaic. So from page 1080 or something and following in BDB, you don't want, unless you're trying to translate the Daniel parts of the Bible that are Daniel or Ezra that are in Aramaic, you're not going to find the word you want there because it's a different language. But it looks the same. So don't look at the Aramaic section of the lexicon. And also, we want to look under trilateral root. So we looked up, a student looked up on the one for lesson 15 to 17, number 3. It says, Ki am Marie hu banim kehashim. So you should have this in front of you if you're watching this, the handout. And on kehashim, we found the trilateral root was kaf cheth shin. And you could look that up. Do you remember what page that was on, Heath? No? No, it wasn't on page 16. Yeah, good. That was on page 471. So you can find that on 471. We're not going to go back over there now. And it was an adjective on that page. And then another student wanted to look up on number 1, Az Yadam Manoach Ki Malach Yehowahu. And Manoach was a challenging one because there, the mem is actually a prefix. And the root is nun cholam cheth. And that was found on page, what page is that? Page 629, underneath the root nuach, which is rest. And we found out it was the name Manoah. So Manoah is related to the word rest. And that was a tough one, though. And sometimes in the lexicon, if there's a tough one, if you look where you think it might be and it's not there, it'll tell you, look on page, boom, and you can go over there. And now I think Lydia was trying to find it. Did you find your word, Lydia? Oh, ooh, that could be a problem. Was there another word any of you looked up that you successfully were able to find? You didn't find it? Okay. Okay. Well, let's look up. We're going to all look up one together right now. All right. On number Marie. Oh, the third word. Ki am Marie. Okay. So there. On Marie, we're going to, what would be the trilateral root for that one, you think? You see, it's a little bit challenging because now you only have 3 letters. So since you only have 3 consonants, what would be a pretty decent place to take a look? Well, yeah, okay, at the top of the page, it gives you the list of where the words were. But Marie, so here's the word Marie. What would be a decent shot for what the 3-letter roots might be? Yeah, mem resh yod is not a bad place to look, though actually sometimes a hierarch yod is like something, so it might also be under mem resh hey, because hays tend to disappear. So let's take a look under those places. And actually, I'm going to borrow this for a second here. $5.99. Okay, so you go to page 599. Ah, very good. I'm glad you actually did it that way. On 599, which column? First column or second column? And Phil, can you look on with his so you can kind of see? First column. Good. There, notice it says Marie. And also, if you have the BDB, I'm going to put this in front of the camera for a second. No? Won't work too well? Okay. If you look there, you can see Marie on the first column. And notice it just says a V, Mara, page 598. So there, what is the trilateral root that the Marie there on 599, what is the trilateral root that that's listed under? What's the verb right before that little Marie there? Good. It's marat on the bottom of 598. Make smooth, bare bald. So you might have thought, well, mem resh yod, this yod is probably some kind of suffix or something, so maybe it's under mem resh tau. And so if you thought that, you looked on 599 and said, oh, it's not under that, it's under mem resh he. See how it says on 599, mem resh yod, v stands for vida, look over, on mem resh he, page 598. If you on 599, look a little bit below there. Notice, can you see where it says Mariva? 599, yeah, 599. It's like 2 words below the Marie on 599. See where it says Mariva? Raise your hand if you see where where I am. Good. Mariva, I think it is. Is that one? Yeah, Mariva. Let's see. Well, good. Well, yeah, Marie. This one right here, Mariva. Notice there it says Mariva, see Reeve. Oh, and actually the newer one, the newer lexicon tells you the page too, which is kind of nice. I noticed in your older BDB, it just says view under Reeve, which is still good. So then you find that root in the lexicon. This one, the newer one even tells you the page. It says page 937. So, but in any case, if you went to page 537, you find that trilateral root. So sometimes in the lexicon, if there's a word where you don't know where to look, it will tell you like that. Look over. Like if you have a decent guess, but you turn out to guess wrong about what the trilateral root is, it will tell you. So under Mariva, maybe you thought it was the mem was part of the root. And so you thought, well, it's mem resh yod. So I'm going to look under here. But you were wrong. The root is actually a resh yod baith, and the mem is a prefix. But it tells you that it's not here, and go look over there. So it's actually, that is a helpful thing. So anyway, so on 598, where is Marie, that word that we looked up? Good. First column at the bottom. What does Marie mean? Good. It means rebellion. And in fact, I think you can even see Isaiah 30 and verse 9 is the first text listed. Notice it says rebellion, Marie, Isaiah 39. Rebellion, I have to see where the Am Marie. So there, well, Am. Well, that would be like the people, Am is people. That'd be like people of rebellion, would be what it is, the people of rebellion. Marie on page 598, is it a noun, an adjective, a preposition? What is it? It tells you right there, right after the letters. Yeah. Good. It says NM, noun masculine. Good. Very good. So it was underneath Mara, be contentious, refractory, rebellious, and it's a noun, Marie. So that's how you use the lexicon. And if you have a newer one, it has the Strong's numbers on the side, and it gives you the page number too if you look in the wrong place, which is kind of a nice thing. There's also actually a few other things about using the lexicon. The preface, if you go to the very front of the lexicon, the preface is worth reading, though it's not super, super important. But right after the preface, there's a list of abbreviations. So go to the abbreviations. So if you see some abbreviation, you don't know what it is, you can look here and it will tell you. Okay? So that's kind of a good thing. It'll tell you what those are. Like on Roman numeral 21, it tells you like some, after all the letters, it tells you what, like you have a greater than, less than sign, equal sign, plus. Plus means that other passages might be cited, so it isn't a complete list of verses with the word. Equivalent, equals, stuff like that. And then the lexicon actually starts with Aleph. So BDB is a valuable lexicon. It is kind of old. It's kind of dated. Oh, one other thing, too, that you might want to be aware of. Go ahead. Let's see. Brown, Driver, and Briggs were very liberal theologically. So when they cite the Pentateuch, look on page 17. Page 17 at the very bottom, you have ayil, ram. It says noun masculine, ayil, ram. At the beginning of each entry, sometimes it also tells you other languages, like it says in Aramaic it's the same, Assyrian it's ailu and stuff like that, Phoenician ayil. Do you guys see where ayil is, ram? Do you see it? No. Okay, go to page 17. 17. Ayil, right at the bottom. And so it gives you like cognate languages sometimes at the beginning. So after you master Hebrew and you want to learn Phoenician and Aramaic and Assyrian and whatever, you can look over there, okay? So, I'm sorry, we're probably not going to be offering Assyrian anytime soon. But anyway, so he has a list there. And notice he gives you a bunch of references. He gives you a bunch of forms too. So notice it says like ayil, Genesis 59. CSTR means the construct. He gives you the construct form. The plural is alim. And the construct plural is ele. And then he says ram, and then he has a number 1. And it says used as food, Genesis 31, 38, E. You guys see that? The E means he thinks it's in the Elohist document. Okay? So you have the Jehovist, the JEDP. So he thinks that is in the E document. So that is, that part of the lexicon is going to be useless, obviously, since there never was an E document. But it does so. But just to show you that the guy's a liberal, he tells you it's in the E or the J or the D or the P. So that's kind of interesting. But anyway, and you will find, like I said, it's a very good lexicon, but it's except for the theological liberalism, and that sometimes affects like if he says something is late, like he'll say stuff that the Bible says, like Daniel, for example, is late. Later, that several centuries later, or Moses predicts, whatever the theological liberal person thinks about what's early and late, he'll think that too. So just keep that in mind. So Job, for example, wasn't written by Job, of course. It was written very late, and so stuff like that. So that's just something to keep in mind. But generally, it's still, for the meaning of words, it's going to be quite reliable the large majority of the time. Any questions about the lexicon at this point? So a lot of these words in the passage you could look up in the back here, but some of them may not be in here because I just gave you the actual verse. And it's good to start getting familiar with using the lexicon. So. Have you seen the BDB app? Oh. Ooh. Oh, hey, okay. That little app, that's good. You get the Lambden app, translates all the exercises for you. So, one other thing, I put the names of the books of the Bible after the verses in Hebrew. Those are the Hebrew names of the books. If you don't know what those book names are, how can you find out? Okay, so go to your Bible. Do you have your Bibles? Get your Bibles out. And if you look at the front, it tells you a few things. So the very front, like the very first page with any writing, it says Torah, Nevi'im, Kethuvim, which is the law, the prophets, and the writings, with no vowels on it. Torah, Nevi'im, Kethuvim. Yes. Yeah. Mine is smaller. You have one? You can look on with them for a second. So good. So you can even give hers and you can kind of share. So good. Torah, Nevi'im, Kethuvim. Then the next page has a bunch of stuff in Hebrew, which you don't need to worry about at this point. And then it says, it's basically like the preface. Then you turn the next page, it tells you preface to the Baumberg-Ginsburg Hebrew Old Testament. Tells you that this is the Hebrew Textus Receptus, which is good, we're for that. And then it has, on the page after that, it says on the top a bunch of other stuff in Hebrew, and it gives you other, like this big list of Hebrew words. Those are different manuscripts that he sometimes cites in the footnotes and some other stuff. And some of those, that introduction to this edition of the Bible that you have, tells you about what these things mean. Okay, so we're not going to go over that right now, but it's in, later you're going to be reading that. But then if you turn to the next page, the page on the left-hand side, it has Torah, the Nevi'im, and Kethuvim. And that's the table of contents, okay? So the table of contents, that's the books of the Bible in Hebrew and with the Hebrew names. So if you know the names in English, it's going to be the same order. So 1, Bereshith. In the Pentateuch, the names of the books are based on the first word. So the first word of Genesis is Bereshith, meaning in the beginning. And so the first, book 1 is Bereshith. And then Exodus, the first word is Shemoth. So the name of Exodus is Shemoth. And then Leviticus, the first word is Vayikra, and so it's called Vayikra. But you can go here, and if you just remember the names of the books in English, you can kind of go through and get them all. So if, on the little handout here, that first one on lesson 12 to 14, it says Yeshayahu. Tell me in English what book. Well, we'll find those two, Yeshayahu and then Melachim Aleph. Tell me what books of the Bible Yeshayahu and Melachim Aleph are. Where it has the verse numbers after the. So here's the verse, and then it has the book and the number. And actually on there you have Shophatim too. Good. Melachim Aleph is, Aleph is like 1. Melachim Aleph is 1 Kings. And what page, based on the table of contents here, does Melachim Aleph, this 1 Kings, begin on? No, that's Shemuel Aleph. That's 1 Samuel. Shemuel Aleph. What is it? 5:12. We have to look in there. It's not on there. It's in the table of contents. 609, good. 609 has Melachim Aleph. 1 Kings. Is Ruth? Oh, yes. This is the Hebrew book order. Okay? So it's not the same order as in the English Bible. So some of the books, and you can find a list, I don't have it with me now, but you can find a list of the order in English somewhere, like online or whatever, of the books of you ordered yours already? Okay, that might be good. You can just copy from him. But, for example, Kethuvim, the writings, the first book is Tehillim, the book of Psalms. Then you have Mashleh, Proverbs, Yov, Job, Shir Hashirim, Song of Solomon, and Ruth. So Ruth is on page 1538. So that it can be a little bit tricky that way, that some of the books are in a different order. So Yeshayahu, tell me if you guys see Yeshayahu anywhere. So it's kind of like Joshua, but it's not Joshua. Joshua is actually Yehoshua. Joshua is on page 391. Yehoshua fit the battle of Jericho. I don't think that sung Negro spirituals probably back then. Where are we looking at? Yeshayahu. We're finding out who that is. And it's a little bit more challenging too because you don't have the vowels on there. I'll give you a hint. It's in the Nevi'im. It's in the Nevi'im, the prophets, the middle one. Not the Torah, not the Kethuvim. Ah, good. 733. No, yeah, Yeshia. Yahoo. I wonder if let me take a look at that. I need to actually check to make sure that, that's what Ginsburg says that, that's Isaiah, Yeshayahu's Isaiah. But maybe, it looks like in the table of contents here, he doesn't put the u at the end. Good, but that's Isaiah. Malachim, Aleph is 1 Kings. How about Shophatim, 15 to 17? Judges, good. And Mishlei, for number 2, what's Mishlei? Proverbs, good. Proverbs. Excellent. So that's how you can look up how that works. What is it? How did you find it?
I looked at the last word. It was the word for wisdom.
Ooh, hey, that's good. That's a good little hint there. Excellent. All right. Well, let's take a break, and then we're going to get into the lesson here. Lessons 15 through 17. Page 63, we're going to look at lesson 15 here. Oh, if you're watching this in video, we did do a few things before we got the video going, so, pray and ask the Lord to help you in the lesson. All right? And let's all actually, before we look at lesson 15, let's say Kothav together, this essential thing to know. Okay, here we go. Kothav, Kothavah, Kothavta, Kothaft, Kothavti, Kothavu, Kothavtem, Kothavten, Kothavnu. Good. Okay. Lesson 15. Here we have another different type, a variation of the standard, and this is Savav. We've seen a bunch of different types here. In here, this is verbs that have identical second and third root consonants. All right? So anything where the second and third root consonants are identical is going to fit this paradigm here. And so I will read all the ones first, and then we'll read them together for Savav. Savav, Savava, Sabotha, Saboth, Sabothi, Savavu, Sabothem, Sabothen, Sabonu. So here, notice which ones look pretty much like Kothav. There's 3 that don't do something pretty weird looking. And then the rest are weird looking. What are the 3 that are pretty much like Kothav? Good. Savav, Savava, and which other one? And Savavu. So the third masculine singular, the third feminine singular, and the third masculine plural. The other ones, the 2 baiths go away. Instead, you have 1 baith with a dagesh forte. So in a certain sense, the 2 baiths are still there because there's a dagesh forte. If you look at the transliteration, notice you have 2 B's. So 2 B's and then, or not 2 B in the other ones. And so that is the question for us right now. And then you have this holem wow that kind of comes out of nowhere where you have those other ones. So if it was some other verb, instead of 2, baith, it would be 1, whatever other consonant is with a holem wow. Right? And so basically you should just memorize, this is another paradigm to memorize. If you remember that rule, then, you kind of have it. On the, he says beneath there, for all suffixes beginning with a consonant, we find a new feature. The stem is sabo. Otherwise, the form is relatively normal, but note hatef pathak for shawa in accordance with paragraph 11, number 2. And 11.2, that was back on page Roman numeral 27. And it's just like the very bottom of the page there. So, yes. Yep. Where it says another device used in a word like the one above, ensure correct pointing is to read with hatef pathak instead of shua. So that's on sav-ava, that's why there's a hatef pathak instead of a shua. It lets you know that the first vowel is a kametz and not a kametz hatuf. Okay, questions on the sav-vav paradigm there? You need to memorize the paradigms both because you're going to need to do it for translating. And if you saw a form like sabotha, you would need to look that up in the lexicon under samek beith beith. If you looked under samek beith wow or samek beith tau, it's not going to be there. So you have to realize that the third consonant got eaten up and the root is actually samek beith beith. There isn't, I mean, I don't know if there's a rule for why, the question is why does it get eaten up? I don't know if there's a rule for why it does. It just, on verbs that have the two final consonants be the same in the root, that's just what they do. So any verb, like the next one beneath there, arar, does the same type of thing. So you have two reishes, and one reish goes away, and you have a holomal. Yeah, the dagesh forte is an indicator that something got eaten up, yes. So that is very helpful, I believe, that the dagesh forte is in there. It does tell you, gives some indication that one of the consonants went away. But basically it's, you have to, there's no way you're going to just know from some rule that you need to stick a hole and wow in there. It's just, that's just what they do, the ones that have two final consonants that are the same. All right, now if the last two root consonants are guttural or resh, you can't put a dagesh forte in them because the gutturals and resh don't take dagesh. And so instead, what changes? Well, the three ones that are normal, the third masculine singular, the third feminine singular, and the third masculine plural, are those three forms the same on arar as on savav? Student says, other than the doubling, do those three forms get the doubling, the normal-looking ones? Is there a dagesh forte in savav, savava, or savavu? No. No, there isn't. So the three normal ones, do they look identical with the vowel pattern to savav on arar? Yeah, it's identical. So that's nice. Now, on the ones where, what would you want to do with the resh? You'd want to put a dagesh in the resh in arotha, aroth, arothi, arothem, arothen, aronu. You can't. So since you can't put the dagesh in the resh, what happens to the first vowel underneath the aleph? What's the difference between the vowel under the samek in sabotha and the vowel, the first vowel in arotha? It goes from pathak to kametz. Sabotha has a pathak, and arar has a kametz. So arotha, aroth, arothi, araru, arothem, arothen. So that's compensatory lengthening. So the shorter vowel changes to a longer vowel. You could think of it like the dagesh bounces out of the resh and goes to the bottom and gets stuck on the bottom of the pathak, but that wouldn't be a very technical way to think of it. You know, gets rejected, goes to the bottom. But it gets lengthened. So the pathak goes to a kametz. Besides that, it's the same. Let's say the forms of arar together. Arar, arara, arotha, aroth, arothi, Araru, Arothem, Arothen, Aronu. Good. Tov ma'od. So, do you need to memorize that one too? Probably if you just memorize Savav and then you remember the lengthening, when you have a guttural erase, you probably don't need to memorize Arar as a separate one. Probably just memorizing Savav would be sufficient. So, okay, if you have no questions on that, we'll go to the next page. The prepositions im and eth with suffixes. What does im mean? Well, it doesn't mean in. There's a pretty big hint on this page of what it means. With, yeah, it says with right there. And eth also can mean with, or it can be like the object marker. So the context will show you typically which it is. So here we have, these are very, very common prepositions, kind of like in English. We use the word with a lot. And in Hebrew, you can stick suffixes on it. So you have, the suffixes are relatively, I think we saw one with suffixes already, didn't we? Yeah, like min. Mimeni, mimecha. We saw that one. There was another one. What page was that one on? Yes, we did the object marker. What page was that? You know what page that was on? I don't think it was lesson 5. Ooh, lesson 7 has some endings too on the Beith, Lamed, Eth with pronominal suffixes. Okay, good. So we learned about the object marker, lesson 4. So look on the suffixes on li, lecha, lach, lo, la, lanu, lachem, lachen, lahem, lahen on page 31. And tell me if they're pretty similar to the ones here for im and ith. Okay, very close. All right. Do you see any differences? You still have that e, echa, ech, o, a, anu, kem, kem, on, or hem, or pretty much. What's different on lahem, on the endings on lahem and on the imam here? Which ones are different? Comparing pages 31 and 64. Well, we're on page 64 already. That's a long way. No, we're not quite at the end of the book yet. No, sorry. Okay, good. So hem and hen are different. They become am and on. But now look down on page 31 on the direct object marker. Othi, othaka, othak, otho, otha, othanu, ethem, ethken, otham, othan. Notice there you have the am and the on the them masculine plural, them feminine plural. So there, those ones have the same endings as on with up here. So the endings, if in terms of recognizing it, that is very helpful. That basically the endings are the same if you learned that one back then. If you didn't learn that one, then of course that doesn't help you, but you really ought to because that's important. Now the word im, though, there's a little bit, if you just go back to page 64, there's a little bit more to learn about it, though. The word im on its own, with, what else happens besides just sticking that e, echa, ech, o, a, etc. ending? Good, there's a doubling in the main. So from im, with, you add the ending and you have to double. And of course, it's not a final name anymore. So, in me, with me. But besides that, that's pretty much what it does. So, okay. Good. Well, let's say these ones together too. If you need to memorize, it would ideally you'd memorize these ones too as a separate paradigm. You might have to just look back at it. But if you remember those endings are pretty much the same in the doubling, you pretty much have it. But these are common enough words that you wouldn't be hurting yourself to memorize it. Okay, let's say them together. Immi, immecha, immak, immo, imma, immanu, immakem, immaken, imam, imman. So you find out that in Hebrew, an imam is not, a Muslim cleric, but it just means with them. So you don't need to blow up upon discovering that fact. Just remember that it means with them. All right. And then you can see beneath there it says an equally common variant. The first person is imadi with me. And of imam, you also have imahem. Imahem, what does that hem ending look like? Good, it looks like the preposition lamed back before. Lahem, lahen. So hey, you have lahem here too. Okay. So that's good. See how learning stuff back then helps you now. This is a good thing. And then you have with, and with, the eth on its own is identical back on lesson 7, where we were before. The direct object marker on, where is it? With the endings. Page 31 has the object marker, the endings in the object marker. Eth is mentioned before then somewhere. I don't remember what. Eth is mentioned in lesson 4. And then you have the endings on it on lesson 7. But notice that with the endings, it's different for the object marker on page 31 and the word with on page 64. What do you notice that's different between eth as the object marker and eth as the pronominal, as the word with, in terms of when it's with me, with you, versus just the direct object, me, you, him, her? A cholam. Which one are you talking about? Are you talking about with me, with thee, with him? Lesson 7. Cholam over the... Oh, yeah, good. That's a definite difference. Yeah, good. So you go from othi, othacha, othach. So there's a cholam after the aleph, and here you have, what do you have instead? Here you have a hirek. So that's a definite difference. Sure. And what else do you notice? Are the endings the same? Good. And you have the doubling in the tau. So cholam versus hirek, doubling in the tau versus no doubling. And the endings at the end, are they the same? Yeah, the endings are the same. Oh, okay. Question is, on otha, there's a dagesh, it looks like, in the hay. And here on with her, it says ita. It looks like there's a dagesh in the hay. What's going on? Can you put a dagesh in a hay? Hey. Maybe it's not a dagesh. Maybe it's a... It's a mapik. You don't get a dagesh in the hay. So when you see a hay with a dot in it, this is telling you this is a consonantal hay. So if you see Hebrew letter X with comets hey, this is the vowel comets and the consonant hey. If there's no dagesh, this is the vowel comets hey. So if you see a hay with a dot in it, it's not a dagesh, it's a mapik. And he talks about that in the introduction somewhere. But good question. All right. Beneath on page 64, he says, note the curious contrast between imakem with comets and itkem with shua. So you can take note of that. It says imakem, imaken, versus itakem, itaken. But I would also note that other than that, they're very similar. That's good to notice too. Okay, any questions on with? Well, let's talk about Asher. Final remarks on Asher. That's pretty good. Final. Asher. Since Asher is not normally governed by a preposition in Hebrew, the counterparts of English to whom, for whom, and the like must be expressed differently. This is accomplished by using a resumptive pronoun within the relative clause itself, as the following examples will make clear. So instead of saying the man to whom I gave the silver, in Hebrew you say the man who I gave the silver to him. So you don't have who or whom modified by to or from or with whom. So you don't say to whom, from whom, with whom. You just do it a different way. So if you look at the Hebrew there, it's ha'ish asher nathati lo eth hakesef. Ha'ish, the man, asher, who or that, nathati, I gave, lo, to him, eth, direct object marker, hakesef, the silver. So the man who I gave to him the silver. That's how you say it in Hebrew. To say the city from which they came, you say the city which they came from it. Ha'ir, the city, Asher, that. Yatsa'u, they came. Mimena, from it, from her. But it's a city, so you say from it. The man with whom they sat, you say the man who they sat with him. Ha'ish, the man, Asher, that, or who. Yashavu, they sat, ito, with him. So you just use Asher, and then you use whatever appropriate preposition. To, with, from, as a separate word. Does that make sense? On the Hebrew to English exercise, it's very easy to see. And if you do a bunch of the exercises, even actually doing it the other way, English to Hebrew, it's not that hard. You just know that Asher doesn't, just always is on its own, and you just say it with a to him or from him or whatever. If appropriate, the adverbs sham or shama may be used instead of a pronoun. The city in which he dwelt, you say the city which he dwelt there. Ha'ir, the city, Asher, that. Yashav, he dwelt. Sham, there. The city that he dwelt there. The city to which he went, you say the city which he went thither. Ha'ir, the city, Asher, that. Halak, he walked or went. Shama, thither. So the city that he walked or went thitherward. The resumptive pronoun, that's the word we're sticking at the end, the sham and la and so on, is optional when Asher refers to the direct object of the verb. So the man whom I sent is the man who I sent him. Ha'ish, the man, Asher, that. Shalakti, I sent, otho, him. Or you can just drop the otho and just say Ha'ish, Asher, Shalakti, the man that I sent. Questions about anything on there with Asher? I think this illustrates how a translation, you can't always replicate the syntax exactly, but the same propositional content can be conveyed. And you want to do it as literally as you can. So in English, we don't say it exactly the same way syntactically, but the same propositional content is conveyed if you translate it into English as in the underlying language text. So the idea that God is trying to convey, you can still get across, even though you can't translate it exactly the same. but you still get the idea across. And you try to translate as literally as you can. All right, topic 65. In this and the previous paragraphs, we have outlined the more or less normative uses of asher as a close correspondent of the English relative pronouns. Many instances of asher are met, however, which do not tally with the simple treatment given here. It's such a common word. Most of these uses can be dealt with as they are met if two general tendencies are kept in mind. Asher tends to take on a compound relative, meaning that which. As such, it may stand as a conjunction at the head of a clause with the force of the fact that, and further may require the translation value of since, because, or some other subordinating conjunction. The exhaustive classification of all these uses is beyond the scope of an elementary grammar. Because asher requires an independent pronominal status, that which, it may occasionally be found with the preceding preposition, quite contrary to common usage. Remember, we just said asher doesn't come with a proposition. On the previous page, it's always on its own, but then he says here once in a while it can. And so it says, resulting from these tendencies, and in irregular uses conjunctions are, and I underlined that, irregular uses conjunctions, I'd view these next three words as almost like their own vocab words. That's the easiest way to learn it. Ya'an asher can mean because, literally because of the fact that. Acharei asher, after. The King James sometimes says after that, because asher is that, and that would be fine. You can say acharei is after, so acharei asher, after that. Ka asher, ka is like or as, so like that, or as according as when. So I would just view those three as their own vocabulary words. Just like in English, sometimes you have two words used together, and together they mean some particular whatever. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but like a frying pan maybe? I don't know. Yeah, laid back. Yeah, laid back is somebody who's mellow, but the two words together have like one meaning. Laid back is, cool, man. So this is kind of like that. Hebrew, the two words together have one meaning. So those three, just view them as vocab words. Finally, although most relative clauses are signaled with asher, it is possible to use a clause to modify a preceding noun with no formal marker or relationship whatever. The term ascendetic is used to describe that. So, be'eretz lo lachem. Be'eretz, in a land, implied that, or which is, lo lahem, not to them. So a land that is not to them. Mikre hu hayalanu. Mikre is a chance, implied that, a chance thing, that hayalanu, that was to us. This omission is more frequent in poetry than in prose, and more frequent after an indefinite antecedent than a definite one. So often in narrative, you're less likely to have this kind of left out stuff. Just like in English poetry, sometimes more things are left out. In Hebrew poetry, sometimes to make rhythm and stuff, more things can be left out. So then you have some vocab here. Mitzvah, commandment. Or is light. It's not something you row with. And these are all words that will help you when you get, or at least will help you in Genesis. Let there be light. That's or. Choshek is darkness. Those are two words you can easily use around the house. You turn the light on, or no light, it's choshek. Haya choshek. There was darkness. And then you turn the light on, or. Oyev is an enemy. Hopefully you don't have too many of those in your household. Savav is to surround or go around. Arar to curse. Azav to abandon. Aver is to cross a place or transgress a commandment. That's a kind of easy, like aver sounds like over, so they're crossing over, you know what I mean? So aver, I'm going over. I'm going aver, I'm going over. So if that helps you learn that word, great. If it doesn't, just memorize it. So cross or transgress. Yarash, to inherit. Shakak, to forget. You can remember that one because you can use it every time you forget a word. See? You can say shakakti. I forgot. Ka'asher, according as when. And you can say shakakti. And I will say, all rarity here. I'm not going to say that to you. Okay, I curse you. And it's not that bad if you forget a word, okay? But, all right. So there's your vocab for Lesson 15. Any questions on Lesson 15 before we talk about Lesson 16? Hopefully we'll get to do a little homework later. Okay, Lesson 16, construct chain. This is very important in both the biblical examples we gave you, and I mean, this is like, you'll find a construct chain in, I'd say, most verses, many verses at least, for sure, tons and tons of verses in the Bible. All right, there is in biblical Hebrew no preposition having the same range of meaning expressed by English of. The of relationship, the genitive case of the classical languages, has its correspondent in the construct chain. Kol hanavi, kol voice, hanavi of the prophet. It's not voice prophet, it's the voice of the prophet, just by having those two words together like that. Melech haaretz, king and the land, together means the king of the land. So the simple juxtaposition of two nouns serves to mark a modifying relationship. The first noun as such a chain is said to be in the construct state. In more modern terminology, the first noun occurs in a bound form as opposed to the normal or free form, absolute used elsewhere. I usually speak of the construct in the absolute form or the normal form. So in a construct chain, the one before the of is the word in the construct, the other word is the normal form. The construct or bound form of noun is frequently different from the absolute. In other words, the vowels change. This difference has arisen mainly because of the stress situation involved. Say, well, is that hard to understand? They get stressed? No, that's not the kind of stress we're talking about. The difference is because the first noun loses its primary stress and becomes proclitic to the second noun. So it's like the first noun's kind of dependent on the second noun, and that kind of changes the stress pattern. So loss of stress may be complete, as commonly with bane, son. Note the makef connecting the two words. So bane, instead of having its own accent in the Hebrew Bible it becomes dependent on the following word. So ben hamelech, the son of the king. And so the stress is gone. But more commonly, the first noun retains its stress. Notice without the makef. Melech haaretz, the king of the land. More important than the stress difference, however, and since he doesn't put accents in super often, here the stress doesn't make that much of a difference in the exercise. And in the Bible, the letter with the stress has the accent over it with the large majority of the accent, so you can figure that out pretty easily. But more important than the stress difference, however, is the change in the vocalization found in many words. So davar, the word, with commas, changes to devar, with shua pathak, devar hamelech, the word of the king. Whoa, that's a change in those vowels. But there's a small number of rules that explain the vast majority of changes, so it's really not that bad. Now he says, only the final noun in a construct chain may have the definite article. That's why, for example, notice on the previous page on Melech haaretz at the bottom, Melech on it, we said the king of the land. Which haaretz on its own, does haaretz on its own mean the land? Yes, it does. Melech on its own. What does Melech mean on its own, Lydia? King. So why do we say the king? There's no article there. Well, glad I asked myself. On page 68, we'll find out the answer here. So he says only the final noun in the construct chain may have the definite article. The definiteness of the entire expression depends on the second noun. If it is made definite with the article, or is a proper name, which is considered definite even without anything else, the first noun is also definite. So Kol Hanavi is the voice of the prophet, because Navi, prophet, has the article. Kol Shemuel is the voice of Samuel, because Shemuel is a name, and so it's definite just on its own. While Kol Navi is a voice of a prophet, because now Navi doesn't have the article. So the word at the end of the construct chain definitizes or keeps indefinite the whole chain. Does that make sense? You do? What do you think? Do you think it makes sense? Kind of. Let's give you. Let's see. On page 69 at the bottom, you have Luak Evan. Luak is tablet, and Evan is stone. So Luak Evan, would that be the tablet of the stone or a tablet of stone? And why? A, because there's no article in the second word. Good. Then you have Luak Ha-Evan. Is that a tablet of stone or the tablet of stone? The tablet. Both words are definite because the second word has the article. Good. Tov Ma'od. And that will become like second nature if you do the exercises relatively soon, because you'll see construct chains over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, back to page 68. Thus, the nouns of a middle of the page. Thus, the nouns of a construct chain will correspond generally to English the of the or a of a. In order to express explicitly a of the preposition lamed is used, often with asher, with a normal, the absolute form of the noun. So if you want to say the word of the king, you can say, Devar Hamelech, the word of the king. If you want to say a word of a king, you can say Devar Melech. If you want to say a word of the king, though, you got to stick a lamed in there. You don't have this. So this is no longer construct chain. This is just, because the construct chain will always be the of the or a of a. If you want to say a of the, you can't use the construct chain. Instead, you have to say it a different way. So you put some preposition in there. So davar lamelech, a word to or from the king. Mizmor LeDavid, a psalm from David. He says psalm of David. That's frequently what the psalm titles say. Psalm of David is Mizmor LeDavid. So that's how you say a of the. And those, again, are not construct chain. Construct chain will always be the of the or a of a. Either noun of the construct chain may be in the plural. And we're going to learn the plural forms in Lesson 18. For the present, just be aware that divrei is the construct plural of devarim, words. So here you have davar, which is a singular construct form of davar, word. Devar ha-nevi'im, the word of the prophets. Divrei ha-navi, the words of the prophet. Divrei ha-nevi'im, the words of the prophets. In each of those examples, why is it always the of the? How do I know it's not a word of prophets or something like that? I'm going to sit down. That's what the Lord did when he taught in the Sermon on the Mount, so I can too. But you guys don't have to stand up, even though everyone stood up and listened to him while he preached.
Because the word dever
Okay, good. The vowels show you that it's a construct, but how do you know it's not a word of prophets? Good. There's an article on Nevi'im, or Navi. So you know the second word is articular, so it's the prophets, or the prophet. And so since it's the prophets, or the prophet, it makes the whole construct chain definite. So that's why it's the word of the prophets, or the of the in each case. Does that make sense? Good. One more interesting thing about the construct chain. An adjective modifying either noun must follow the entire chain. So the construct chain is bound pretty closely together. They're chained together. So you can't stick an adjective in the middle of it and break the chain. So adjectives have to go at the end after the whole chain is done. Now that adjective might modify either the first or the second noun of the chain. So how do you know? Once in a while there's ambiguity, but usually agreement in number and gender will tell you. So if you have a construct chain with a masculine and a feminine noun, and the adjective is feminine in form, well, that tells you. Or you have a construct chain with a singular and plural that are both masculine, and the adjective is plural, well, that tells you which word it modifies. So usually there's no ambiguity. Once in a while there can be, but usually number, gender will tell you what you need to know. And context is, of course, very important. Be sure all of the examples are clear. And he mentions that Asheth and Neshe are the construct forms of Isha, wife, and Nashim, or wife or woman, plural, respectively. So here we have Devar Hanavi Hara. Devar is word, Hanavi, prophet, Hara, evil. Why is it the word of the evil prophet? How do you know it's not a word of a evil prophet or an evil prophet? There's an article on Navi, prophet. The two words in the construct chain are devar and navi. And then you have an adjective. Ra is the adjective stuck at the end in each of these examples. So now there, both devar and navi are singular, and they're both masculine. And so ra is also masculine. So there is some ambiguity. You don't know if it's the word of the evil prophet or the evil word of the prophet. So there you don't know for sure. Sometimes context can tell you. But there is an element of ambiguity. But now the next one, we have Divrei Hanavi Haraim. How do you know that that is the evil words of the prophet versus the words of the evil prophets? How do you know Ra'im is modifying Divrei and not modifying Navi? Good. Ra'im is plural. And Divrei is plural. And so therefore, Ra'im has to be modifying words. In the next one, the word of the evil prophets, Devar HaNevi'im HaRa'im, Davar is singular, Ra'im is plural, Navi'im is plural, so therefore it's the word of the evil prophets. Then we have Asheth Ha'ish Hatov, the wife of the good man. We know that it is the man that is good here because Tov is masculine, Ish is masculine, and wife, Asheth, is feminine. So therefore, can't be modifying that. The good wife of the man, Asheth Ha'ish Hatovah. Hatovah is feminine, so is Asheth, so therefore it's modifying that. Ish is masculine. Nishe Ha'ish Hayafim, the beautiful wives of the man. Yafim, beautiful, is feminine plural, like Nashe, so therefore it has to modify that. The wives of the handsome men. Nishe Ha'anashim Hayafim. Hayafim is plural and masculine, just like Anashim, so therefore it has to be modifying that word. Does that make sense? Okay, good. The use of two adjectives, one modifying each noun, is avoided. So you don't have two different adjectives at the end of a construct chain where one modifies one word and the other word. But you can have two adjectives modifying one of the words in the chain. So here, like divrei hamelech, that's your construct chain, the words of the king. And then you have hatov wa hayashar, the good and the just. And those are both modifying king, because words is plural and king is singular, and tov is singular and yashar is singular. So therefore, it's the words of the king, the good, and the just. So the words of the good and the just king. Or you could say divrei hamelech hatovim wa hayasharim, the good and just words of the king. Their divrei hamelech is again the construct, the words of the king. And tovim and hayafim, because they're plural, are modifying divrei, not melech. So you can have two adjectives modifying a single word in the construct chain, but you won't have two different adjectives at the end, and one modifies one, the other the other. You can have three or more nouns in a construct chain, but four or more is very rare. So you could say, the wife of the son of the prophet, Esheth ben Hanavi. Stuff like that. You do see those in there. And if you think about it, now that you know they have construct chains in Hebrew, you think about the frequency in the English, in the King James, where you have like the, of, the. It's more than just in our common 21st century modern English that we use of quite as frequently, and a lot of those are construct chains in Hebrew. That's why you have a lot of in there. So the same rules here for definiteness and adjectival modification apply. So even if there's three or more, you still will only have one adjective modifying something in there, or if you have more than one adjective, it's only modifying one of the words in the construct chain. Now he says, now this is the exception. Occasionally, and usually with fixed expressions, the first or second noun of a construct chain may be replaced by a longer phrase. The following types are considered anomalous and should not be used in the exercises. And I underlined that. He's telling you this because you see it once in a while in the Bible, but this is unusual. He won't give you it in the exercises. This is a violation of the normal rule. Okay? So he's just letting you know that you might see it in the Bible once in a while, but don't do this in the exercises. So Melech hashamim wa haaretz, the king of heaven and of earth, both, instead of just having the one word at the end of the construct chain, in the absolute form you have two. That's unusual. You don't expect that. It won't be in the exercises. Divrei u'ma'aseh hamelech, the words and deeds of the king. So there you have the construct form. There's two words instead of one. That's unusual. It's an anomalous thing. You're not going to see in the exercises. Simchath bakatzir, the joy, and then you have a preposition, beith, before the noun harvest, katzir. So a preposition stuck between the words of the construct chain. Now that's not supposed to happen. You're not supposed to have words in between the construct chain, but you can once in a while. It can happen, but it's rare. Okay? So you'll see that once in a while in the Bible, but the overwhelming majority of construct chains don't do that, and in the exercises there won't be words like that. So the rule is, between the words of a construct chain, nothing breaks the chain. Anything modifying, stick it at the end. Now, you also, another thing here, active participles may be an object construed with the following object as verbs. So because a participle is a verbal noun, it can act like a verb sometimes, it can act like a noun. So hashomer, the keeping, the one who is keeping, he who keeps, shamar is guard or keep. Eth haTorah, he who is keeping, direct object marker, the Torah, the law. So you can have that. That's not a construct chain. That's just, he's telling you that in verses number 2. You can also have active participles in a construct relationship with nouns, because participles can act like nouns, just like they can act like verbs. And so shomer, he who keeps, haTorah, the keeper of the law, would be a more literal way than he translates it. The one who in general keeps the law. So the keeper of the law would be the second one. As indicated, there's frequently a difference in meaning. As a verb, the reference is real and particular. So in hashomer eth haTorah, That's like somebody who at this time is obeying the Torah. While the second one, the keeper of the law, it's like a general, like, this is what the guy does as like a pattern of his life. He's a keeper of the law. Or he's, a worshiper of Jehovah. While if you had, the active participle with the direct object marker, might mean he's worshiping Jehovah right now. He's at the temple or whatever. While if you just have the worshiper of Jehovah with the participle and the word worship, that would be mark of who he is. That's what he is. He's a worshiper of Jehovah versus a worshiper of Baal. So that's a little useful exegetical note. He says the precise meaning of the consonant change is difficult to define. While a rough translation using of or the possessive, as in the king's son, will often suffice, he says there are many instances where an adjectival or prepositional phrase is better. I'm not saying you can never translate it the way he says here, but if the of the works, it's fine to just go with that. Remember, he's more into dynamic equivalence. So I'm not saying that translating Luak Evan as a stone tablet instead of a tablet of stone is necessarily wrong, but I would tend to translate it with of, at least at this point, unless there's a good reason to say something else, because it is words in the construct. So instead of saying the stone tablet, saying the tablet of stone is probably better. A holy mountain would be a mountain of holiness, a vessel of water. He says a vessel for water. That's not very literal. A vessel of water. And when he says difficult to define, it's like the English word of. The English word of has a pretty broad semantic field, broad range of meaning, and similar in the construct. It has a broad range of meaning. Generally, like it says at the bottom of 69, the student should keep in mind the fact that in a construct chain, the second noun modifies or restricts the first in some way, which is typically what the of the means anyway. From this general rule, they may proceed to a correct translation as demanded by the context, by proper English usage. Slavish adherence to a singular translation pattern should be avoided. I think you're probably fine with slavishly translating it as of. Just put those shackles on, unless there's a real good reason to say otherwise. Any questions about that paragraph? Looks like we do not have a man or woman of questions here right now. Okay, form of the construct singular. So we mentioned that the vowels change. Well, what do? Well, there's 3 rules that help you with lots and lots and lots of these. The construct form of a singular noun, exclusive of feminines and a, and a few others, may be derived from the absolute by the application of the following rules. Unstressed sere and comets are replaced by schwa. Comets in a final closed syllable is replaced by pathak. Sere in a final closed syllable usually remains unchanged, but in a small group of words is replaced by pathak. So, and look, so while I'm writing something on the board here, look over those examples and see if you get them. And I'm actually going to use one of those words up here, but that's the secret. Looking at those examples, can you see how they're applying those rules 1, 2, and 3? Yav goes to yad in a construct. The comets changes to a pathak because it's only one syllable word, so it's a final closed syllable. Makom goes to makom, comets changing to shwa, because the comets isn't in a stressed syllable. So it's unstressed, so the comets goes to shwa. Makom to makom. Navi goes to navi, because again, that the first syllable is not stressed. The final syllable is a stressed syllable, unless it tells you otherwise. And so the comets goes to shwa. Kokav goes to kokav, the comets changing to a pathak, because you have the final closed syllable, kav, and so comets to pathak. If you look down on shofet, the word judge, shofet stays the same because of rule 3. Final closed syllable, the tsere is usually unchanged, but in a small group of words is changed to pathak. And sometimes none of those rules apply, so nothing changes. Like in melech there, melech just stays the same. Doesn't do anything. So those rules make sense? Why does zakein change to zakan while shofet stays as shofet? Why does the tsere disappear in zakein but not disappear in shofet based on rule 3? Well, both said the closed syllable on shofet, but good. The shofet does end in a closed syllable, but so does zakein. They both have a closed syllable. So they both have a tsere and a final closed syllable. Yeah, the reason why is because in number 3, it says in a small group of words, zakein changes from a tsere to a pathak, and zakein just happens to be one of that small group. It means that there's some, the question is, what does it mean by small group? It means that most of the time, it doesn't change. So most words with that tsere in the final closed syllable don't change, but there's a number of words where it does. And zakein just happens to be one of those words. So if the construct, in the vocabulary, if the constructs do anything unusual, he will give you the construct form as well. And the lexicon also typically will give you what the construct form is. So it's still good to know that rule because, in other words, in that small group of words, it always changes to the pathak. It doesn't change to something else. So at least that's good. Let's try writing a few of these on the board. So Heath, why don't you come up and on exercise A, oyev, and go ahead and put up the construct of oyev. Do the first. Put oyev up, and then Lydia, why don't you do the very last the last word at the bottom, ra'av. You go ahead and put ra'av in the construct up on the board too. Do you see where ra'av is? Okay. Sure, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, he's standing up there anyway. Ooh, he says it doesn't change. None of the rules apply except unless it's number 3. And you are correct. Oyev doesn't change. So that's nice. Does or change the next word over? No, or doesn't change. How about eretz? Does eretz change? No. Okay, this is pretty good. How about ish? Does ish change? No. Hey, that's nice too. How about gibor? Does gibor change? This is a pretty easy homework. How about gamal? Gamal does change. Camel. So write gamal up. You can put gamal, so at least you get to write something that changes. And ra'av is another one that does change, Lydia. And you can do shulchan as well, because that's one that changes. Shulchan is the bottom column. You have shulchan, shofet, ra'av. So after he's done, you can put that one up. And actually, Heath, why don't you also do anan? That's second column. At the very bottom, you have shulchan. Above that, you have pari, and then above that, you have anan. Anan, the word cloud. Second column, near the bottom, you have anan, then you have pari, and you have shulchan. After you do take care of the camel there, gamal. Does the black show up on the video? Okay, good. Gamal actually kind of sounds like camel. It's kind of nice. All right. What do you think, Liddy? Do you like his camel and his cloud? Gamal becomes gamal, and anan becomes anan. Tell me, Heath, which rules did you apply here? Okay, remember rule 1, comments the shua. Okay.
Number 2, when the final syllable, the say turns into a capital.
Good. And number 2, the comments to pathak. You think those are correct, Lydia? What do you think? What do you think it looks like it? That should be exactly right, except something should look weird in anan. One of those letters is saying, hey, man, I don't like that vowel you put under me. Good. Ayin doesn't like shawah because it's a guttural. So what would it be instead? Hatef pathak. Yeah. If you have one of these rules, and since it doesn't reduce the shawah, instead it's going to be hatef pathak. So I've had you do that one because that's a little tricky.
It doesn't say that, does it?
No, that's just, you just know that at this point because you just know the gutturals don't take audible shawah, vocal shawah. So no, it does not say it. Okay. Ready to be in the spotlight here? Maybe. You can put yours in red. Let's see, I forgot which one we were doing. Ra'av, famine, ra'av. What do you think? Do you think that's right? Well, the resh looks kind of like a doll. I guess it's a resh because it's...
Oh, yeah, sorry. The resh.
Good question. Does the resh change? Actually, no, the resh is fine. The resh actually can keep you can have it that way. So actually, that is correct. Ra'av, it doesn't become a hatef pathak. Resh sometimes acts like a guttural, but not always. Here it is not. So good. So ra'av is correct. Yay. And what was the other one that I asked you to do? Shulchan. Table. Well, you can put the consonants up. You know those don't change. Okay, Shulchan, that's your original one. So let's see. Rule 1, do we have an unstressed tsere or comets that can get replaced? We do have a comets, but is it stressed? Oh, your noon is kind of exalted up above all the other letters. That's okay, don't worry about it, but it wouldn't normally be up that high. It's like leaping for joy instead of being down. Okay, anyway, so there is a comets, but it's not an unstressed syllable, so rule 1 doesn't apply. How about 2? Comets in a final closed syllable.
Yes.
Oh, we do, yeah. So what should that change into? Good, a pathak. And then do we have a tsere in a final closed syllable? For rule 3. No, there's no tseres anywhere. So that's all it does. Shulchan goes to shulchan. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you just forgot to put the dot on the sheen. But on the top, yeah.
Oh, here.
Yeah.
Right side.
Yeah. Good. Good. So shulchan to shulchan. For time's sake, we're not going to go over it right now, but look in your answer key and look on page 56, 57. He gives some rules for why these nouns, I mean, you just have these 3 rules. And so you can either just memorize the rules, or you can learn why, or you can memorize the rules and learn why. But he tells you why these rules make sense on page 57. And if we weren't short on time, I'd read that right now to you. But I would highly encourage you to read those. For some of you, maybe it's not going to help you out, but some of you, it could help you have a light bulb go off. So he has a big explanation of why those do what they do. But right now, you guys feel like you need to take a break, or do you want to just keep going? You're good? Toe? Okay. Well, let's keep going then. Let's look at lesson 17. Construct singular minor types. So this is not ones that are young, not minor in that sense, but these are ones that are less common. And unfortunately, some of the more common words do weird things, just like in English. So these are things that if you don't remember them, you're going to have to turn back and look at this page. So you should learn them. But it's not as widespread of a rule as what we just learned. I mean, those 3 rules are going to be applied all the time, over and over and over, because we're going to see constant chains over and over and over. All right. So he says the 2 words av and ach, father and brother, show a suffix hirek yod in the construct with a regular reduction to stem vowel. So av goes to avi and brother to achi, construct form of father and brother. So they just do that. B, this is a minor type, but at least it's more than on just 2 words. But father and brother are common words in the Bible. So that's why A is important. All nouns of the pattern bayeth and maweth show a regular contraction in the construct. So the pathak yod hirek changes to a tsere yod, and the comets wow segol changes to a cholam wow. So if you see there, bayeth, the construct form is baith. So notice there, in bayeth, is the yod part of a vowel, or is the yod a consonantal yod? and bayeth? He says it's a vowel. What do you think, Lydia? Is it a vowel? In bayeth? Oh, it is not a vowel, because it has a herek underneath it. See? Bayeth must be a consonant, because it has its own vowel underneath it. Yeah. But notice in baith, now it's a vowel. So you change from having this consonantal yod and pathak yod herek to just the vowel tsere yod, bayeth to baith. Similarly, in maweth, the wow is a consonantal wow. It has the vowel segol underneath it, maweth. But it changes the vowel cholam wow, maweth to moth. So there, basically in B, you just memorize gesundheit. You just memorize that those two patterns happen, and that's worth doing. Construct form of bain, son, is commonly procolligated to the following word as ben. Like if you think of the airport in Israel, Ben Gurion Airport. So bain, son, when it gets the makef, bain changes to ben, seirei to segol. And shame can do that as well, but it's much less frequent. And of course, ben is very common in the Bible, so that's worth being aware of just because it's so common. A few nouns outwardly identical to the type zakein, construct zakan, which we saw last lesson, have an unusual construct form. So kathef has a construct kethef, yarek has a construct yerek. So what is there to memorize there? Just be aware there that sometimes certain nouns have unusual things in the construct. And here it looks like they changed the segols. E. Nouns ending in segol he, have construct forms in tsere he. And other changes are in accordance with rules 1, 2, and 3 that we learned. So sadeh goes to sedeh. Why did the comets in sadeh change to a segol change to a shawah in sedeh? Good, because of rule number 1 we just learned. Why did in sadeh the segol change to its seirei in sedeh? It's because of what he just said right above it in E. Nouns ending in segol he change to seirei he. It's a very obvious question. So that's just what they do. So that's something to be aware of. If it ends with segol he, changes to seirei he. Mechaneh, mechaneh. Sadeh, sadeh. But then he says there are quite a few other apparent exceptions to the basic rules given in Lesson 16, but none of them is frequent enough to represent a type. The vocabularies will tell you when they happen. Okay, only one other thing to learn in this lesson. That's the construct singular feminine nouns in So here you replace the with an ath, and then you just follow the rules learned in the preceding lesson. So shana, you take off the comet at the end, and you stick a pathak tau on it. So shana to shanath. But then you can't have the commas underneath the sheen because of rule 1 from the previous lesson, so it changes to shwa. So shana goes to shinath. Same thing with eitzah. Eitzah, you take the comets hey off the end, you stick a pathak tau on it instead. But you can't have the tsere because it's because of rule number 1, unstressed tsere and comets changes shwa. So you'd want a shawah and have it atsath, but you can't have a shawah because it's a guttural, so it's hatef pathak atsath. Malka, you take the comet's hay off, stick a pathak tau on it, and nothing else changes. Baraka, you would take the comet's hay off the end, stick the pathak tau on it. Now in baraka, is there an unstressed, I'm going to write this one on the board just so you can kind of visualize it. All right. I want you to look at Barakah, and if you don't remember what the rule of Shawah is, go back and look on the page, the paragraph where it tells you while I'm writing this up here, because then you'll see why Barakah changes to Birkath. Okay, so there's Barakah. So first we do the easy part to it. So what do we do to the ending of Barakah, if this is a construct now? You guys are probably looking at the rule of Shawah, which is good, since I told you to do that. So the easy part here, yeah, so we take the comet's hay off, and we stick on their pathak tau. So that's easy enough. Now, rules 1, 2, and 3 from lesson 16. Do any of those 3 rules apply? Good, because we have an unstressed comets. Whoa, comets or paths. So rule 1 or rule 2? Well, rule 2 is comets in a final closed syllables replaced by pathak. Is this comets in a final syllable? This is, we're talking about, Barakah, blessing. And so what we did is we took off the ah and we put the ath on it. And now we're saying this comets needs to do something to it. And the question is, does rule 1 on page, what page did it go? Does rule 1 on page 70 apply? Or does rule 2 apply on page 70? And so we're seeing if rule 2 applies. Rule 2 is comets in a final closed syllable is replaced by pathak. So is this a final syllable? Ra. Well, no. This is the final syllable. So what rule 2 wouldn't apply. And also, this isn't a closed syllable either. Ra is an open syllable. So it wouldn't change to a pathak because it's not in a final closed syllable. If there was no kath at the end, maybe it would. But it's not. And it still wouldn't be a closed syllable. So rule 1 will apply. Unstressed tzere and comets are replaced by shawah. Are you following that, Lydia?
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong.
Okay.
There's a pond down here.
Or pond?
Barak.
Oh, well, okay.
Barakah.
That's what we are looking at. Remember, our original form was Barakah. That's what we are looking at. Barakah. Yes. And so, since it had the comet's hay at the end, when it becomes construct, we took the comet's hay off and changed it to an ath. So this comet's hay went away and became ath here. And now this comets should change to shawah. So then it should be barakath. But the rule of shawah doesn't let you have 2 comets two shawahs like that in a row. If you look back on paragraph 5, and so rule of shawah on Roman numeral 21 here, sequences involving gutturals. So now we have consonant shawah, resh, which here would do that. Rule shawah, guttural position. Very end of the rule of Shua here. Yeah, so you can't have constant Shua. And so it changes to something else. I think I'm looking at the wrong. It does change the Hirek, and that is definitely correct, but I'm looking at the wrong place. Oh, I'm looking at Roman numeral 21. I should be looking at Roman numeral 20, yeah. So Roman numeral 20. So there you have, I was reading from, I have both rule of Shua underlined on Roman numeral 21 and Roman numeral 20. So 2 syllables Shua doesn't allow it. So instead of consonant Shua becomes consonant Hirek consonant. So now, because it can't be Barakath, it becomes, get rid of that, it just becomes Bir Kath, and this becomes a silent Shua. So that's how Barakah changes to Bir Kath. The Ah goes away, becomes an Ath. The Comets gets reduced to Shua, but then because you can't have Shua, it becomes Hirek, and then a silent Shua. So 3 changes. Very exciting. All right, let's see if we can go back to lesson 17 here. All right. 2 types of variations from the norm are common. Most trisyllabic nouns beginning with a closed syllable have penultimately stressed construct forms. Remember, the penultima is a syllable before the ultima, the last syllable. So milchama changes to milchemeth, mishpacha, mishpachath. And he didn't give you a rule there for those segals showing up. That would be something that you tell you in the vocabulary. And then he just, so the only thing he's telling you there is that this, you can have this, the penult is stressed in the construct form while it wasn't in the absolute form. The vowel changes, he didn't give you a rule for that. He's just telling you that it's accented. That's the only thing he's telling you. Right? Then you have number 2. Sometimes the expected reduction of tsere or comets to Shua does not take place. This is by and large unpredictable and will require special notes. So bereka, pond. Oh, that's what you're looking at, pond, not blessing. Is that what you're doing, Lydia?
Yeah, I was looking at
Oh, yeah, don't look at the pond right now. Yeah, blessing. So bereka, pond. The construct is berekath. And there, the tsere should have gone away, but it didn't. Or distress, tsara. You have tsarath, and there the comets change to pathak under the resh in accordance with Rule 2, but the comets under the tsare did not change to Shua in accordance with Rule 1. And so that he's just telling you that once in a while the rules aren't followed, and that's unpredictable, and he would tell you if it didn't happen. Most feminine nouns ending in ath, eth, uth, ith, etc. in the absolute are not susceptible to further change in the construct. Those that dar follow the rules. Now, then we have one rule, a very common word, ish, or isha, rather. What does isha mean? Woman. Are there lots of women in the Bible? Yeah, a lot of women. So the word woman has an irregular construct, asheth. And that's just worth memorizing as its own thing because the word woman is common enough. Any questions on that stuff there? And vocabulary here. Again, a lot of it's useful for Genesis 1. Rakia, the firmament, he says, apparently considered a solid barrier by the cosmographers of Genesis. Because Moses didn't write Genesis, of course, according to Lambden, which he's wrong about. And, I mean, we can use words like that, too. You don't want to, read too much like they really thought, I don't know, some kind of mythological thing, because the word rakia, firmament, is used. I mean, we use the English word firmament today, and that doesn't mean we think that it's like an actual, like, made out of plastic or something. I don't know. So, but the word rakia is the word firmament, okay? Yavashah, dry ground. Av is father. That's a word you could use in real life commonly enough. Ach, brother, another common one. Bane, son. Nice word there. Malakah is queen. So you can tell that to your mother or to your wife. Shame, name. And you have first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Rishon, Sheni, Shalishi, Revi'i, Hamishi. Again, words that will be helpful for us in translating Genesis. Al Panay, upon the face. He says on the surface of, up against, literally it would be upon. Panay is the face. So upon the face of. Cain is thus or so. All right. Any questions about any of that? Let's actually, you all can, yes, upon the face of. You might say, it might be like al panei ha'aretz, upon the face of the ground, which means on the surface of the ground. But yeah, panei is face, so upon the face of the ground. Let's try 1b. Heath, why don't you write, you can write the rich man's field on the board. And Liddy, you can write the father of the king. And this will help you with these construct rules here. And if you can't remember a vocab word, I can help you. The point here is not as much to look everything up in the glossary right now as to get the rules down here. The rich man's field, which would be the field of the rich man. Yeah, so like when he says a possessive, it's going to be like the of the. Yeah, so sadeh is field. Okay, good. Well, the normal form and the lexical form is without comments, yes. Sadeh. So there's going to be a construct here, but you can just leave it as sadeh for now and then worry about changing it after you put the next thing up. Yeah, leave it as comments for now. Good. The field of the man, the rich, because you can't stick the adjective rich in between the two words in the construct. So it's the field of the man, the rich. Now, you can make some changes. Well, Dal isn't rich. It's poor. This is after he pays his taxes, I guess. After his wealth is redistributed. Rich is Ashir. I don't know what lesson that's in. Mm-hmm. Okay. Make your hierarchy a little more visible just so that it can be seen on the camera. The sheen. Ha-ashir. Underneath your sheen, yeah, just make it a little easier to see. Yeah, that's not in construct. Yeah, good. Sadeh. You have based on rule 1. All right. And sadeh ends in a segol hey. We learned a rule about words that end in segol hey. On page 73. Good. Sadeh becomes sadeh. So sadeh ha'ish. Why didn't you put an article on sadeh? Why don't you have hasadeh ha'ish? It's the field, right? Good. Since it's a construct, you can't do it. Good. So it still is the field of the rich man. Good. Ha'ish. Now, ashir, actually, it's almost exactly right, but ashir doesn't have the correct vowel on the article because of one of the less common things about with the ayin. Good, very good. Sadeh ha'ish ha'ashir. You like that, Lydia? He's furiously thinking about number 2. Yeah, that's actually right. Very good. Sadeh ha'ish ha'ashir. You want to try number 2 here? All right. Great. Good for you. The father of the king, yeah. You can try 5 if you want to, but then you can critique hers when she puts it up there. The 5th word of the law. But we're going to be wrapping it up here. All right, the father of the king, Av Hamelech. Looks like the name is kind of like toppling. It's going to faint. Topple over. It's a little bit on the side. Okay, so Av Hamelech, okay. You know, I was like, he's going to pass out. It's like, yeah, it's toppling over. Yeah, so that's okay. All right, and then the last letter should go a little below the line too, because the final cough goes down. So I draw the line longer on the final cough. Good. All right, is that correct? Av Hamelech. Good. Look on page 73. This is, he tells you on, here, you can use mine. No, that's the actual book. Look what he says about Av. See rule number 1 there? We just learned it, but at least we talked about it. But Av, he says, in the construct singular becomes avi. 17a. See right here? The 2 words, Av and Ak. Avi. So that's going to be avi instead of Av. That's not a normal thing. That's just what that word does.
Just the word father?
Just the word father and just the word brother, yeah. So instead of Av, it's avi. It's one of those minor types. Oh, I just used that paper. It's right behind there. Or use your finger too. I couldn't find the eraser. Hatef Pathak. I can't see. Let's see. Av, Avi. Good. So Avi is correct. And Melech. Besides the name is toppling over a little bit. Is everything right about the Melech, Hamelech? Good. Hey Pathak was doubling. See, probably the meme is toppling over because he hasn't eaten anything. So he needed to have some food in his tummy. So now he'll be fine now. Here's the Dagesh in there. So good. So Avi Hamelech. Very good. The father of the king. Thank you, Lydia. Good job. If you have number 5, you can tell me right now, but otherwise we're... Kamishi. You know, if you do you think you want to write it on the board? Yeah, just write. That'll be the last one. Just write that on the board, and then we'll wrap it up here. He is doing number 5. The 5th word of the law, which would be the word of the law, the 5th, because of course the adjective can't break the construct chain. And that word, of course, is just in the vocabulary, chemishi. All right, let's see. So the 5th word of the law, dever haTorah hachemishi. Okay. So, well, the Shua actually, well, the Hay comets is followed by a Chayth. So, should it be comets with the Chayth following? I remember where he gives you all those article things. It's actually not the right vowel. He says before hay and chayth, the article is normally hay pathak with no doubling. But if the hay is followed by unaccented comets or the chayth followed by an accented or unaccented comets, the article is hay segol. So here you have hay followed by chayth. And before hay and chayth, the article is normally hay pathak and no doubling. So it doesn't get, the hay pathak doesn't get lengthened, it just is hay pathak with no doubling. Good. So that is ha chamishi. And there's one other little thing that should be changed here. Good. HaTorah. Good. Good. HaTorah needs a dogish forte. Dever HaTorah chemishi. Good. Tov ma'od. That is correct. All right. If you have any, we're kind of out of time. If you have any homework questions, I'm happy to answer them afterwards. You can also ask them on the forums. I'm happy to answer them there. But we will read Numbers 6, 24, 26, and we will be dismissed. Let's have a question. No? Okay. Let's do a little Hebrew every day. will do very, very well. On the Bible part, I want you to translate those verses because I think it'll be a blessing to you because that's what you're learning this language for. But I don't want it to become like you can't find a word, and instead of doing your other homework, you spend an hour trying to find this one word in BDB. So if it's taking you, especially if you're an auditor here anyway, if you're an auditor and it's taking you a really long time, you just can't find this word, if it takes you more than like 7 minutes to find a word, you can just use a computer program or something to find out what the word is. Okay? So that would actually, even for credit people can do that too, but especially if you're an auditor. Because I want this to be a blessing that you actually get to read the Bible, not a burden where you can't find this word, you're like trying to read the whole lexicon cover to cover, and you can't find it, and then it's a big problem. So that's what is mentioned that for the verses I gave you there. Okay, let's read Numbers 6, 24, 26. Vayikra. Oh, no, excuse me, that's Leviticus. Shemoth, Vayikra. Bamidbar is what we need. So Bamidbar 6, 24, 26 on page 253. I'll read 24. Keith, if you want to read 25, Letty, you can read 26. Oh, well, he'll have to pass. You'll have to pass it over here. All right. Yivarakecha Yehovah v'yishmarecha. Panai. Good. Ya'er Yehovah Panai ve'elecha v'chuneka. Yeah, 26. Yeah, there's one word on the end of the line. Yissa. It goes down to the next line. Yehovah. Jehovah. Yissa Yehovah. It's a pay, panai. Nope, that's a pay because it has a meme. I don't know. I'll find a meme for you somewhere. There's a meme in 27. Wihi beyom kaloth Moshe. The meme is right there in Moshe. Panai. Pei comets, noon comets, yod wow, panai. Yisa Yehovah panai. Eleka. Okay, not bad. Wa Yasem. Laka, final cough, laka. Word for peace here. Word for peace. Shalom. Shin, Kametz, Lamed, Cholam, Wow, Mem. Final name. Shalom. Yeah, shalom. Good. All right. Well, you were dismissed. If you have any, like I said, homework questions, feel free to ask them on the forum. Yeah. I want to just explain a little bit to you, camera people, what we did, a little bit what we did before it came on. I mean, you guys can stick around if you want to, but you saw this already. But what we looked at in the Bible, we have these verses that you have for homework for translation. And we did a little bit trying to find some words in the lexicon and explain a few things about it. So as you, in the ones for lessons 12 to 14, 15 to 17, and so on, the later ones will have more words. Some of the verses we chose are theologically significant and so on. And so they may not be words that you know from Lambden. Now the first ones are going to be, the first few verses, you're going to know a lot of the vocab. I was looking around, finding verses that know a lot of the vocab you knew already. All right. The later ones, I've tried to find ones where you might have to look up the vocabulary, but even though you have to look it up, the syntax is stuff you know. So in other words, it has a verb that doesn't have an imperfect tense, but just a perfect in the cal or a participle or something like that, versus some other thing that you don't have any clue about. But the vocabulary in the later verses here, you might not know yet. All right? So you're going to very possibly have to be using your lexicon, BDB. So if you're using BDB, just a few little things on BDB. Is there a way to, like, if I came close to, like, zoom in on BDB? You try? If I can come close to it, too. Okay. Wow. Pretty neat. So here's BDB. Now, the introduction is not bad to read, but maybe it's boring, I don't know. But it wouldn't be bad, just kind of get a sense of the history of the thing. You have a list of abbreviations. So in the entries, you'll notice abbreviations. So you don't know what they are, you will be told in the list. And so that actually is useful. And at the end, after the alphabetical part, there's some stuff on like what you see a plus sign, equal sign, what all that stuff means. So that's useful. I think we mentioned already, but in the very back as well, there is a section on Aramaic. So if you're finding a word and you go past and you're reading Hebrew and you find it after page 1078, you're looking in Aramaic. So don't look in the Aramaic section unless you're in, well, he tells you actually on page 1078 the parts of Aramaic. Daniel 2:46 to 7:23, Ezra 4:8 to 6:13, 7:12 to 26, Jeremiah 10:11, Genesis 31:4, part of that verse, 31:47. So besides that, it's going to be in the actual Hebrew section. So don't look in the Aramaic part. The lexicon, also, if you have a newer one, in the back, it has Strong's numbers listed. And for each Strong's number, it tells you the page on BDB to look at. Now, I actually don't really want you to find the words that way, but if you spend a really long time and you just are pulling your hair out, this is a crutch that you can use, okay? Or actually, yeah, so this is a crutch in the back, but I don't want you to be depending on it. So try to find it without this first, but if you really can't find it, you can just find out what Strong's number for the word is. And then, there you go. Now, the words in the lexicon are organized by trilateral root. And when you first start using it, that will make it harder to find the words. I'm not going to say it doesn't. But once you find them, it is nice because you see the verb and nouns and adjectives and whatever else is related to the word. It's all together in one place. So you can see the verb to say and the nouns that are related to that, and so on. I'll give you an illustration of how that can, I'm going to actually give you one word, it was a really hard word, but how that actually can be kind of a useful thing. So let's say for lesson 17, number 3, you have the sentence right here. You have the sentence, Ki am Marie who, you know what, actually, I'm going to do one up here. So Az yada manoach ki malach Yehowahu. Okay, so here you have this sentence here. So let's say you want to look up malach, angel or messenger. Now you say, okay, there's 4 consonants here. Mem, lamed, aleph, and a final kaf. Well, the final, I'm guessing that, probably the trilateral root is mem, lamed, kaf. That seems like a pretty good guess here. And so we're going to look for mem, lamed, aleph. We're going to look under mem, lamed, aleph and see what page that would be on. So you open your lexicon here and you look around, and lo and behold, let's see, mem. So I found the memes here, looking for the mem lamed now. Teth Yod. Faith. At the top tells you. So here's mem Yod. Mem. Where am I looking up? I'm looking up Malach. Right? Yeah. Malach. Yeah. Yod Kaf Lamed. So here's mem lamed. Okay. So we found the first 2. Mem lamed aleph. Let's see if we see angel, or you don't know what the word is yet, so you don't know it's angel. So you're looking at our mem lamed aleph. Let's see if we can find malach here. Where would it be? Malach. You don't see. Oh, but look here. Notice here. You see the word malach, but it doesn't give you a definition. Say, well, how come it doesn't do that? Why isn't the word malach here? Well, the reason is because the root isn't mem lamed aleph. The root is actually lamed aleph kof. The last 3 consonants, the mem is like a prefix. Now, you guessed wrong, but by looking in a place that was reasonable in the lexicon, it actually told you in the second column of 571, it told you the right root. It says it's the trilateral root is lamed aleph kof. So sometimes if you look in the wrong place, you can actually, it'll tell you where the right place is. And now if you so then you are going to look under lamed aleph kof, and it also, in a more modern BDB, it says page 521, 522. So you just go over there. So here's 521. Here's lamed aleph kof. Okay. And that is a trilateral root meaning messenger. And there's malach. So malach means messenger. Definition 1 is messenger. It's used for humans, prophets, priests that are messengers, and so on. And it's used for an angel. So it gives you a whole bunch of references where it's used for an angel. And you can notice it's kind of useful to have a list under trilateral. Other words under the root lamed aleph kof besides messenger are malakah, occupation or work, mal-akuth on the next page, the word message, Malachi, the prophet Malachi, and la'el, belonging to God, I guess, unless it's its own thing. So you can see that listing the words under the trilateral root is kind of a nice thing. You can see the words that are related. And also after the word malach, it says nm, so that means it's a noun that's masculine. So it's a masculine noun at the top under malach in the second column. It says 214 underneath the word. That means it's used 214 times in the Bible. And it gives you a bunch of references. And sometimes you can find the actual verse that you're translating underneath that list. And so, for example, if you're translating Genesis 16:7, it gives you the word. It gives you the form and the construct, plural, a bunch of useful stuff in here. We also mentioned that sometimes, since the lexicon was made by theological liberals, it'll tell you if it's in these mythical JEDP documents. So, for example, under definition 1a, messenger, it says in Genesis 32 it's in J and E. And then it says it's not in the P document. So, of course, that is useless information. But a lot of the stuff in the lexicon is useful. And so that's how you use the lexicon. You look under the trilateral root. Sometimes that can be a challenge. If you can't find the word for a long time, you can look at the Strong's number in the back. But it can also be a useful thing as well. Do you people in the video have any questions about this? Well, if you do, I can't answer them because I don't know. Okay, so we're done.